You're listening to Brunch. Let's take the time now and go and join Dr. Winford James, who, as I said, does not put water in his mouth to say anything he has to say, which is one of the reasons that I like him. He like Martin Daly, some of the folks who just come out and say it like it is. Doctor, good morning to you. How are you? Let us see. There we go. Doctor,
no, I'm getting you.
There you go. Now you can hear me, and now I can hear you. Good morning, and how are you today?
Good morning. I am strong and good.
It is always good to hear that you're strong. I always tell you that you put young men to shame. That's a good thing. Dr. James, former university lecturer, taking it easy now, but still doing all the work, and a political analyst. He like a political commentator. Okay, fine, so let's stay there. Let us talk about this situation with the Office of Disaster Preparation. The Prime Minister said, square pegs in wrong holes. We knew early that some heads would roll. It was no surprise then when we had the resignation. Some folks say it was a resignation, or some others say he was asked to say goodbye. He did make, however, the person who led that at the time, he made some significant comments in his departure letter, among them being the whole question of standards in Trinidad and Tobago as it relates to building codes and so on, saying that we are not ready. Speak to me about that situation, the response, first of all, from the ODPM, and the subsequent fallout.
But I believe that person has a name, so it might be easier for us to refer to him by name. I believe it's Colonel Dave Williams.
Yes, he is retired colonel. Yes, that's right. Yes,
and he was the deputy CEO, which means that we probably don't have somebody filling the office of CEO. Which itself might be significant in some way. Now, Mr. Williams, Colonel Williams, said that he resigned as a result of the statements made by Prime Minister Rowley, who was quite critical of the response of ODPM to the flooding disaster that had overwhelmed parts of Trinidad. And he felt, having already decided that there was no reason to resign, upon hearing what the Prime Minister said, he thought, and I agree with him, that he should resign. And then he said some very, very good things in his resignation or his departure letter, which perhaps some of which we are going to discuss today. And I wondered why, in the first instance, he did not say the things that he said upon departure, because many of the things he said are relevant, and in fact, when you hear and you read what he said, you don't get the impression of somebody who's a square peg in a wrong hole. You get the sense of somebody who's quite knowledgeable, who knows what is required, who understands some fine distinctions. Press apparently was not willing to allow.
And that is the unspoken part, you see, because when you see it, the question is, why didn't he do it while there? Well, he articulated them too immediately in his resignation letter. He didn't wait for a week after. He didn't look to come up with something. They were here, but somebody is stepping on my toes or keeping the door closed.
Right. But he was always, it was the arrogance, it's the arrogance that people were responding to. How could he, whether he was right or wrong, in not responding in the way people expected him, because there is this distinction between first responders and second responders and third responders. He certainly, after he resigned, was very clear that the ODPM is not a first responder. Okay? Right. And that's an important distinction he was making.
Yes, a coordinator, not a first responder. Yes,
exactly. And that was an important point that he could have made, but did not choose to make when he was approached by the press for a response. Now, it was unfortunate that he should say it's a small thing, the flooding, but he had a message, a meaning in his head that was not appropriate as a response in a time when people were suffering or losing property, were having their property destroyed, were being inconvenienced in dramatic ways. it was not the kind of statement you expect from somebody who was heading the ODPM. And so people were incensed that this guy could lack the social intelligence, the empathy to make a statement like that. And then when he was asked about the kind of response he made, he was very cagey. You have work to do, I have my work to do, you follow. He was very non-committal afterwards, almost as if he was not accountable to the press or the people who were questioning. He's a public officer, for crying out loud.
Yes, it was the dismissive tone, I think, is what really...
So he came across as having an unnecessary arrogance. I suppose arrogance is good in certain circumstances, but certainly not in the circumstance where the floods were overwhelming parts of the country, and he was saying, no, it's a small thing. Well, and he didn't think at the time that he needed to explain to the people and soothe their anxieties. He didn't think so. And then the Prime Minister comes in and says, well, you know, the Prime Minister is speaking like people like me, who is saying, but this is bad, this is but this is not the way a public agency should respond in such a circumstance. So I don't think he had a choice but to resign.
I got you.
Or whether he was actually a square peg in a round hole, I'm not so sure. Having read his letter, I'm sure this is a man who is highly intelligent, who is informed, and who knows where the boundaries are with respect to his functions and the function of other agencies. You know, so I was a little bit surprised by that. In fact, almost disappointed that he could say all these good things after resigning, when he could have said them up front and provided some kind of comfort or some kind of understanding to the public of what the ODPM does and what are the challenges that the organization faces.
And you're quite right on that, because one of the areas, as you just observed, I mean, poignant among all of this is the understanding of the role of the ODPM. Lots of folks easily took to the area of they should be blamed as the first responders, and he did make it very clear, and that was important so the public understand that distinction, that we are coordinators, but the first responders are in fact your city corporations.
Yes.
Now,
yes, exactly.
he raised another point. Dr. Winford James is my guest, and we are talking about the resignation of Colonel Dave Williams. By the way, the new ODPM head is Neville Wint, just that we have that clear. Now, he made a very important point about building codes in Trinidad and Tobago.
Yeah.
I have heard this before, many times before, raised, and I've also heard it raised that the lobby is so strong that nothing is being done. What is your view on this, Doc?
Yes, and I lay the blame for that squarely in the lap of the PNM. That is the party that has governed us most, that has had the opportunity to change things, and that party, by the way, has done quite a lot of things to transform Trinidad and Tobago. But for some reason which we can begin to explore, has done very little with respect to building codes. Now, they do have some restrictions, you know, in particular areas, you know. For example, you might not be able to go up more than one story. You may only be able to put down a bungalow. That is to say legally, Rennie B, in certain areas. You're not allowed to go above a certain number of levels. And usually the first level is the bungalow, right? What we call the flat house.
The flat house, yes.
That's what we call that. That's a beautiful metaphor, if you wish. As we call it, the flat house. Now, so you find people, once they have the money and once they are not prevailed upon to observe standards in certain neighborhoods, doing whatever they like and affecting the value of property, the value of the property of people who have decided to so organize their circumstances as to improve the value of their property. There are people who, because they are not being prosecuted, because they are not being stopped or prevented from doing certain wrong things, building homes, because they have the money, or they are allowed to do so because of the slow of justice in this place, or the lack of law to enforce, doing their own stuff and affecting the quality of the housing in a particular neighborhood. Also, they are putting themselves and others at risk because of the kind of structures they put up. And then they turn around and blame the government for not helping them enough.
And you run a double problem inside of here, because after they do that, they also, in their construction that they are doing, if they don't, I've heard many times of folks who have built stuff, have not gone to the drainage department to find out what's going on with that. They alter the water course, or they block it in some instances. And I'm a little tired, as the taxpayers, I'm sure you are, of us coming up with money to support the lifestyle of people who are just doing something wrong. $35 million, some folks may not think it's a lot of money. Is a lot of money, and $35 million is now beginning to pay out. Of course, this is going to cover the wide gambit of those affected by the flood. But
the payout does not solve the problem. Doesn't just provide temporary relief for the damage that has been done for a year in a particular season.
And that's why we should stop paying for it, because we should be able to charge these people enough money to, one, be a hurdle, be prohibitive for them to do it, and two, to pay some of this money, because we've got to find the money as taxpayers all the time to put a temporary solution, as you said.
Right. And that is where politics now trumps common sense, trumps the standards of development that are recognized all over the world as the ones that we must pursue, because we have to look at the long term and how we are improving people's lives, how we are helping people to become more mature, more responsible. We have to look to the future generations that are going to come and become successors, inheritors in those places that are very dangerous for their well-being. We have to look at all those things. But why would you want to be helping people perennially when the circumstances themselves remain unchanged? There's no solution there. But as I said, politics trumps common sense and trumps developmental standards all the time. We want to win these people's votes. Therefore, we are going to pander to their vanity and to their dereliction of duty and so on, which, of course, is nonsensical. And this is what comes from when government rules without attention to the voices of the other publics here who say, the environmentalists, for example, who would say, but that is not the right way. There are better ways of doing this thing. You know, when government does not heed the voices of certain responsible publics, this is what happens. And when government feels that a vote is more important than the ruin that bad living habits cause, I mean, that is what you're going to have. But the point is, where is the will? Where is the will on the part of whatever cabinet is in place to fix this problem? Who benefits from it? You see?
At the end of the day, and I like the way in which you stated, because there's a lot of nuance in what you said. At the end of the day, folks got to stop playing their games, because these are games where you are condoning illegality, and it's costing me money. Not only costing me money in direct money, but it's costing in keeping the country way back, because we keep doing the same thing over and over and over and over again. And if you check the cost of dealing with this illegality for the last 10 years, and you realize the kind of money we're talking about, even if I took the $35 million here, which I think is just a small hint at what the real cost is, but take this $35 million over 10 years, you're looking at $350 million.
So let's ask now, and probably focus on that if we can. Why have successive governments not treated with the issue of proper building codes? Right? What is there that is preventing government, cabinets, from treating with such?
Well, do you not think it has something to do? Earlier, I had Rishi Maharaj here. We were talking about campaigns finance reform. We were talking about legislation that benefit people to do, halfway, half standard things, and you save money that way, and you get through by going without worrying about these standards. Isn't that a contributor to this? Doesn't it raise the question of campaign finance reform?
I'm not so sure that there's a connection. There may be a connection, but I'm not so sure for this reason. That in order to pay back your financiers, you give them projects, right? Now, hopefully, they don't choose the projects that you give them. You decide that these are the projects. You have them bid in this false way because you already know who is going to win the project, right? So we have a word in this country that describes us very well, mama guy. We're mama guy, the public, so to speak. But the point is, you determine the projects. Now, one of the projects you can have is a project that precisely has to do with building codes. Precisely has to do with fixing the flooding problem. I mean, really fixing it. And of course, part of the fix, as far as I can see, is to move people from the areas that easily flood. Yeah? Mm-hmm. Move them from there and move them elsewhere. To sites that are unlikely to flood.
But I'm sorry. Please complete.
No, I'm just basically making the point that if you're going to have to pay back your financiers, you can choose projects that are going to benefit the country, that are going to solve identified and identifiable problems, right? So in that sense, if campaigns finance reform is related to that. I'm just saying you can select your project. No,
You're going to say that I'm too jaundiced because my general thing is some of these projects that are presented, they are projects that are supplied by the people who will in fact get the contract. So some of the initiatives that you find coming out to the advantage of some people in the first place.
Yes, and they're not really to the advantage of communities and the public as they are with the country at large. But that is not, of course, what is going to fix the campaign financing problem. You know that.
No, I was not suggesting that it would fix it. I saw it as a result of people who may have projects in their head, things where they make money, they supply the ideas are accepted and then named as policy. But like I said, I may be too jaundiced in that area.
I said, no, we all are really.
I took a little long way to get there, but importantly here, Dr. Winford James, is that the resignation of Colonel Dave Williams with all his problems, and maybe it was all the better, but everything happens for a reason. And if what went on there happened just for the reason of highlighting some of the areas of neglect that need be corrected, this was a good thing.
Right, yes. I mean, if that is the case, so following on your suggestion that everything happens for a reason, so you are suggesting that his resignation has happened in order to highlight the problem of the lack of building codes. Among
some of the other areas he mentioned.
Yeah, some of the other areas.
Because as you said, he was there all the time. These answers, these problems he articulated came out fast and furious. This had to be discussed before one assumes.
Well, yes. All right. And we do not know what is really going to drive change in the way that is desirable. So perhaps the course of events might cause the current cabinet, the current government, now put a focus on developing building codes and, of course, legislation to constrain behavior and to allow people to enforce.
Hence the reason I asked your good self to be here, so we cannot let that important part of his resignation just slide with the resignation, but bring it back on the table.
Yes, I think so. I think it's an important letter that should go before cabinet and should form the basis for new initiatives in that regard. Or I should say in those regards, because there are other matters that you raise as are all sensible. This is not a silly man, not from what I have read. This is not a man that is a square peg in a round hole. Not that the Prime Minister said that of him. He was only responding to the Prime Minister and saying, okay, well, if the chief, if the top honcho can say that about me, but there's no point hanging around.
I respect him for that. That's a good thing a military man does.
Yes, and I respect him for that. I'm talking about the quality of his mind. Whereas before it was a little bit taciturn, and arrogant with it, and not condescending to give explanations that became necessary. So he was withholding information in this condescending and this distastefully arrogant way. But then, when water, as we said, became more than flour, that is to say with the Prime Minister's intervention, then he said, okay, now I'm going to resign. I'm going to tell you guys a few things. There is a certain arrogance about that too. This is a man who apparently saying, I don't need you guys, I'm self-sufficient, I suppose years of being in authority has bred that into him. But he's saying, look, I don't have to be here, but I'll tell you guys a few things. And this is happening in 2017,
I took it, Dr. James, I took it as a man who was saying straight out, these are solutions we need. Nobody's paying attention. I've been frustrated from getting it done, and I'll let you know as I'm leaving.
Yeah, but I'm doing it on my own terms.
Yeah.
There is that for individual character, for which I respect the man. But yes, your point that this now could be the basis for governmental action in a legislative way could be the key point.
That's what I'm hoping for. It's 12 minutes away from the top of the hour. Dr. Winford James is my guest. I'm not going to have you here and not get into the area of the UNC. Ganga Singh says that the leadership is wrong for calling this premature, this earlier than scheduled leadership poll. What is it in the UNC? There's some who are saying that he's got a point, including the former Prime Minister Basdeo Pandey says that this should not be called. What is your take on this situation with the early calling of leadership election within the UNC?
I think I agree with Ganga Singh mostly. When I read the constitution of the UNC, and I have read it, yes, it does seem to be saying that the office of political leader runs for 3 consecutive years, and the office of the other position runs for 2 consecutive years, right? And it is clear the reasons why holders of such offices may either step down from them or, it doesn't allow for you to go beyond. The reason why you have to satisfy those conditions. The conditions that would allow you to violate that or not adhere to that are very clearly stated in the Constitution, and they include things like if you resign, right, or you've been removed from the office and so on, right, or if there is some other cause that is unspecified, you can vary what is there, right? Now, Kamla Prasad Bisetta was elected to her current political position in a late manner. She did it after it was due, right? That's the first thing to note. And she still had a year to go, right? Because this was done in 2015, December. She still has a year to go, and she is calling elections before she has finished her full term, which is what it seems to me the Constitution requires her to do, to finish her term, right? And if you read the Constitution that way, I mean, law allows different opinions to prevail depending on who is presiding. And I am not presiding, I'm just merely reading and interpreting. And I'm thinking, but if Ganga Singh makes the point that, yes, she's acting ultra-virus, let me go read the law and see what it says. And the law to my mind, support what Ganga Singh is saying, except that there is this matter of interpretation and there is this matter of politics.
Well, then
there are no sanctions, you know.
None whatsoever. But here is my question. Then there must be a question raised. Why would it be called at this time? Some opine, some have proffered that this was done because you're losing command of the troops, and this way you take care of the damage before the damage gets to the irreparable stage. Is that your reading? Are you hearing anything that could give you a reason why it would be called this early?
I don't know about the internal conflicts. There must be internal conflicts within the UNC. There must be. I am not aware, so I cannot speculate. But it seems reasonable to assume that there is some disaffection with her leadership within the party. That, to my mind, sounds very sensible because you just don't get up and do things like that.
Precisely.
But she's trying to forestall something, perhaps.
I mean,
but I think...
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Doc.
More importantly, however, is that she offers a reason which you probably can examine. The reason that she has offered the public is that her reading is that the Rowley administration is close to collapse. That for her is a political reality. That's not even simply an interpretation or a feeling. He is saying because the Rowley administration is close to collapse, she needs now to prepare to get back into government by refreshing the mandate that she was given. She and the current national executive were given in 2015. Yes? But it is based on that, what I might call it, a tenuous basis, a tenuous factor. That is to say, you read that because people are a little bit concerned about rising taxation and probably frequent taxation, that Rowley's government is close to collapse, which is, to my mind, so silly. We can get into that.
That argument that argument is as connected as Donald Trump is to reality. I mean, really, it does not even begin to make any sense.
But I'm just saying, and that is going to be satisfied. The third condition in the I think it's Article 18. I don't remember now. No? Article 12 or Article 18. That says for any cause. Now, how can that be a cause? It doesn't say so, of course. But that's the only thing I can see as a cause. How can that be a cause? So that is a red herring. That is just a blinder. It's, she's just trying to get some justification. It's very spurious, if you ask me. Now, but as I was saying in my last column, she could get away with it. And there are reasons why she could get away with it. If she calls the elections on November 26th, and if she wins, and she's expected to win because the opposition is weak, so far as we know, then all transgressions would be forgiven.
Oh, as Mr. Pandey said, if I'm going to be in charge of the election and I call it, who do you expect to win? Yeah, I've got 1 minute remaining. Would be Doctor. Just one remaining. If you can give this to me, and I know I'm being unfair in asking you this, but I'll do my best. Give me in 1 minute. Rudal Munilal, the Attorney General, says you have not been served yet. Take heart. Take heart. You will be served shortly. That's Mr. Young. Yeah. Sorry, it was the minister in the ministry of the Prime Minister who said that, and Minister, I believe, in the Attorney General office.
I like the facetiousness.
Stuart Young said, you have not been served, we have not forgotten you.
Don't rush the brush. It's coming. It's coming.
Dr. James.
Based on what the revelation so far, it would be a travesty if he is not charged. So let him hold his breath if he wishes. But if he wants to hold his breath, why, it's fine. But it's coming. Don't rush the brush. You see, whenever politicians, because they, especially those in the government, who have control over the public purse, and we find them in what appears to be their hands in the tiller, when we follow the money and we do the forensics and so on, and we find them, we lay the charge, and hopefully, we are not prejudging anything, but if you have evidence, we don't have it, this is the Attorney General's office, and you prosecute these guys and hopefully win your case, and that would tell the public, this can be done.
I hear that's why I find this so important. Doctor, as usual, you put your finger right on it, because you've got to have one example. And you get one example, and then people start believing again. No matter what you say, no matter how you preach, no matter what evidence you have, nothing is going to mean anything until somebody pays something.
That's correct. And it's not only Rudal Munilal, it's also the lawyer, what's his name? The former Attorney General.
Oh, you mean the former Attorney General, the former AG?
AG, yes.
Ramlogan, AG Ramlogan.
Yes, Anand Ramlogan.
Yes, indeed. Well, I'll tell you what, those you see, I wanted to do you something very unfair, but the gods are with you. I was about to say that Mr. Munilal don't have to worry, because even though he's on the Cabo Star, he will eventually get to Trinidad and not give you a chance to respond.
Okay.
He's
on the Cabo Star. Okay.
He's on the Cabo Star. That is under repairs right now.
Okay.
Dr. James, have yourself a wonderful day. Thank you as always.
You too.